the slow burn that was episode 4 of House of the Dragon. This is going to be our review for this episode here on Rants or Us, and I will say when I say slow burn, it truly actually was a slow burn. Uh, there wasn't really any action that I can remember in this episode, and it was just a lot of talky, a lot of gossip, and then a lot of people being told something and then reacting to it. Now, there was a lot of information that was told, a lot of important information that was told. A lot of things I can remember, a lot of things that I'm kind of like, okay, I didn't know that aspect of it. But after the episode was over, I kind of had a somewhat of a respect for it, even though at the time I thought it was probably one of the worst episodes that we had got so far. And I still think it was actually not really that great of an episode, but it did have some incredibly mind blowing facts and really clues that lead up to what happens on further down the road when it comes to this show. So I'll go ahead and get started in it. Like I said, it was just a lot of gossip, a lot of people reacting. That's really all this episode actually truly was. It really was. Um, I guess the one thing that caught my attention in the very first part of this episode was what exactly is killing Viserys? Like, what is killing him? Somebody is killing him. Somebody. And it makes me wonder who. Because unless he's got some kind of weird allergic reaction to the throne, I have no idea. But there's got to be some poison on that throne. And I just wonder exactly who it could be. Is it Otto Hightower? Is it Daemon? Who exactly is the person that's behind what is really going on with him? I can't think of any two people outside of those two that I would really lay the blame on, because those are the two that have the most to gain from his death. I don't think it is Rhaenyra for obvious reasons, but I don't know. It's very strange. You see all these sores. Probably one of the worst sex scenes comes with Viserys and Alicent, and you see all those, looks like staph infection on his back. Like, it looks really bad. All these like bulls and just yucky. Like, it looks bad. But I mean, it's just something that I hope. I think we got one more episode with Viserys. I hope we get an answer to exactly who is killing him, because I don't think it's so much as what, but who at this point. And if I had to place a bet, I would probably say it has to do with Otto Hightower. I would probably have to say it has to do with Otto Hightower, because it is a very there was one comment at the very end, and I think Viserys was talking about his father, if I'm not mistaken, and he says, when my father died, he was a very healthy man, and he was going to be king, and he always, in 5 days he died. In 5 days he died. And it's kind of weird you had the most to gain, Otto Hightower. So it kind of makes me think, okay, maybe he's putting some pieces together. Maybe he's realizing that maybe his own affliction has to do with Otto Hightower. That's kind of interesting. Viserys is a very interesting king. I almost wish that we would have had seasons of him, because he comes off as this kind of, at first, this belligerent king, this king that just wants peace at any cost, that really tries to, I don't know, shut himself off from the world, that really just wants, an heir to the throne. And we think we're getting that, but we get so much from him that he's a very dedicated man. He's a man that believes in Aegon's vision. And I mean the vision of the Night King. And that it's going to be his heir that's going to stop the Night King. He really believes this. So it makes me wonder, you know, before this show, when they kept talking about him as a weak king and about basically how he's going to be kind of like a side note, because that's kind of how they were imagining him to be. It's actually been the polar opposite. He's actually a very strong king, a very smart king. The way he puts Rhaenyra in her place when she tries to, try to get the upper hand on him, he always has the upper hand. He always finds ways to do that. So even with Daemon Targaryen, like Daemon thinks that he's outsmarting the king knows exactly his plan. Like that's just kind of odd. He might not know it at first, but he comes to that conclusion really, really quick. And he does so in this episode. We get to see Alicent Hightower, or Alicent, I guess, Targaryen, I guess she is now. She's very unhappy. She's very unhappy. She's shut off from the world. She basically, we get to see, of course, in the sex scene, we get to see how unhappy she truly is as queen. She has that little chit chat with Rhaenyra, which I thought really kind of told exactly her whole feelings on everything. That's what I love about this show is they don't just tell us, they show us. And that's pretty awesome. That's great writing. That's great storytelling overall. And that's what we get to see from her. And I think Viserys is even kind of coming to this conclusion as well that, hey, maybe Alicent isn't, this love of my life, that maybe Otto Hightower had a little something to do with her coming to me and being there in my moment of need. All of that thing, I think all of this is starting to play in Viserys' mind that, hey, maybe Alicent is a little bit more shrewd than what he's once believed her to be. But you can also see in Alicent, she really truly does care about Rhaenyra. She doesn't like the fact that, there's being all these allegations towards her later on in the episode. And I think that was probably one of the worst scenes of this episode, simply because I felt like Alicent has been played well so far, and I felt like she was just overly emotional in that scene, that it didn't feel like her character in that way. But overall, we get the vision of what Alicent is at this point in her life. She's the unhappy wife. She has this heir. She has a father that's constantly demanding of her. And then she's put in this place of really kind of, do I want what's best for my son, or do I want what's best for Rhaenyra? And that's a really, really terrible choice for her to have to make. But that's one, of course, that she ends up making. But we'll say probably the better episode, the best part of this episode is the Blackwood Lord. I mean, it looks like he's 13. They have all those suitors that's up there, and they're trying to get the hand of Rhaenyra, and they're trying to get her to pick one of them. And you got this Blackwood Lord and this guy from House Bracken, I guess the heir to House Bracken. And every time this little lord tries to say, hey, my family is this, and I would protect you, and our line would be from the first men, and all of these things, which actually, be honest, makes a lot of sense. But he is a boy, after all. Then this douchebag from House Bracken's mocking him this whole time. Finally, this Blackwood boy, Lord, he just takes his sword out. And you think that you hear like a little skirmish, and then you get Sir Criston Cole turns around, and you see this House Bracken Lord lying on the ground, holding his guts, spitting out blood, and the Blackwood boy, Lord, just, throwing up, shocked that he actually killed a man. I thought that was an awesome part of this episode. I really did enjoy it. it was, I don't know, it was kind of dark, but it was also really kind of funny to a certain point. And I think that Blackwood Lord is actually going to play a more significant role in the future. So I don't think that's the last time we're going to get to see him. Now, okay, the biggest question for me in this episode was, what is the deal with the weirwood tree? They've showed it numerous times. It can't be a coincidence. Just can't be a coincidence. We get to see, all these conversations in front of it. And it makes you wonder if somehow we're going to get either something from Children of the Forest in it, or either we're going to get Bran himself, maybe somehow a voice or something appearing when it comes to these weirwood trees, or just some recognition that kind of hints back to that. Because there's too many conversations that's happening within this weirwood tree, and I don't really understand how any of that really plays a role in anything Targaryen related. It's just very odd to me. Like, when I think of those weirwood trees, I think of Starks. I don't think of Targaryens. So it's a very, I think it's maybe like a subtle hint that maybe we're going to get some kind of callback from something that we've seen in Game of Thrones, whether it be the Night King, whether it be, I don't know, the Raven, or whether it with the three-eyed Raven, or either it's going to be Bran. In some form or fashion, I think it's got to have something, or the Children of the Forest. It could be one of those. I'm interested to see exactly where they go with this, and if we get to see maybe a possible identity or a possible conclusion to that question at the end of this season. It's going to be interesting, and I'm going to definitely be paying attention just for any more subtle hints that they give off to maybe see if they're kind of giving us a hint towards maybe a callback. But overall, I mean, this was Daemon Targaryen's episode. I love the scene when he just walks in. Like, he arrives on his dragon. He goes into the king's chamber, or, the throne room, and he gets swords pulled on him. He just kind of just casually walks up to the sword like, I don't really care. And he's like, well, they named me King of the Stepstones. And of course, that kind of is a front to Viserys. He's like, well, so you're saying you're a king too? And he's like, nah. He's like, here, add this, what is it, crab feeder's sword to the throne, or my, I don't know if it was his sword or whose sword it was, but he tells him, he's like, here, add that to your throne, basically. And that's kind of like a really cool moment. It's like a really cocky moment. And it's also a moment that he kind of shows where he's a little submissive towards his brother, but in a respectful way, but not in a submissive way that he's cowering. Like, you can tell he's still Daemon Targaryen, but he's going to show a little bit of respect to his brother all at the same time, while also being that same cocky, arrogant attitude. I think he does a real great job of that in this episode all the way around. Like, you never know what Daemon is thinking in any of these scenes that he's in. When he's talking to Rhaenyra, when he's talking to Viserys, you don't know what his plan is. Even when he admits to what he does to Viserys, to Rhaenyra, or what he was going to do, which I couldn't really tell if he actually did anything besides kissing her. I don't know. I really couldn't tell. I'd have to go back and rewatch that. But either way, it's like Viserys says, it doesn't really matter what you did or you didn't do. It's really just all about the rumors that would occur of it, that it looks bad. So I would just say overall, I just feel like this is Daemon's best episode, and it's also showing him as a saboteur. It's the part where you don't really know what he's thinking, but he's trying to screw something up. he knows he can't go to Viserys and say, "Hey, I want your daughter." He knows that that would never work. He knows that Viserys will never, 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 never allow him to marry his daughter for a lot of different reasons. One, she's his uncle, or he's her uncle, so he probably knows that that's not going to happen. So the only way that he can do that is maybe deflower and maybe make it where she is unable to have a to marry into a noble family because they won't have her because she's not a virgin. So I thought that was kind of like a really interesting way of trying to get his way, something I wasn't necessarily expecting. But it's actually, man, it's actually quite brilliant. It's actually quite brilliant. And I tell you, there was also that moment when they're in the brothel and they're making love that you get the scene where he does actually truly want Rhaenyra. He does really truly want her, but then he hits the wall and he just leaves, just like leaves, which makes me think, is he like conflicted about doing this to his brother's daughter? Or is it, what is it? Is it him just playing a role and making himself, I guess, appear conflicted about it? That's something that we probably will never know. But I really thought, what is his name? Matt Smith, that plays Daemon Targaryen. I thought he actually did a really good job at displaying those emotions and making us wonder exactly what really he's wanting and whether or not he is conflicted or not. We'll just never know. But it's really fun to speculate in that regard. But I guess probably the one thing that stood out for me too, that didn't make sense at the very end, was Rhaenyra has her fun. She goes back. She finally gets with Kristen Cole. She makes her choices and she seems content with dealing with the consequences of it, which make literally no sense to me. This is a girl that wants to be queen, but yet it seems like she does everything to screw up that. The only person that really truly is keeping her as his heir, she is trying to ruin her relationship with him, and which is so crazy to me. Like, she is literally sabotaging her own efforts in that regard. Instead of making him feel comfortable with his choice, that, that she's the rightful heir and she's going to be the heir, she gives him all these reasons to doubt her. And I mean, you got to look at it from a parent's perspective. You got to look at it from a king's perspective. He's got this daughter that all these rumors are going around. He's got a house to preserve. He's got a kingdom to preserve. And there's all these rumors, and all these people know all these different things. And a lot of this can be used as blackmail. Otto Hightower really could have used his knowledge of what went on in that brothel to his benefit. He ended up trying to do the straightforward thing of telling the king in order to probably just cause some chaos with Viserys and his daughter. Instead, it kind of backfired on him. Probably, I think that's the one moment that makes you realize that maybe as cunning as what Otto Hightower is presenting himself to be, he makes some serious mistakes. And he made that mistake with Viserys. And that's a mistake that it doesn't look like he's going to be able to come back from. Which, I don't know. We'll have to see. Have to see exactly how this goes. I know he is going to play a big role in the future. But I just wonder if it's going to be in Viserys' court. Because right now, he's no longer the hand of the king. And it's all because of his own doing. If he would have kept quiet he would still be handed the king. But no, he tried to play his cards, and unfortunately, he was caught cheating. And I feel like some of the accusations that Viserys was throwing at him really should make him fearful, because Viserys clearly lets him know that he is onto him. He is onto him, and he knows what his Otto Hightower's plans really are, and that he thinks that he's playing the king, but the king really knows the truth about him. So I thought that was kind of a really interesting back and forth dialogue. But we have got so many things with Rhaenyra saying, "Oh, I don't want to be queen," or "I don't want to be this person that just gives heirs to this to the kingdom, basically. That I want to be a free person." And even Alicent, and you get Viserys a little bit later down the road, that hey, you got to do what you got to do for the kingdom. Alicent, I feel like had that really good moment with her where she's like, "Oh, you're complaining about having a dozen suitors, and most women don't even get two. So yeah, stop complaining." Like you're pretty privileged. Like you're a really privileged kid, and you're sitting there whining about it. It's like you're whining about your money, and you're whining about your duty, and that's a pretty awesome duty to have to do, be queen or be king. That's about as good as it gets in a kingdom that probably most people don't live over 30 in. That at every second you could be either eaten by rats or killed by some drunken lord, and nothing happened. You could like, there's so many bad things that can happen in Westeros, and she's really privileged not to have to experience any of them. And so I really kind of thought that was a good moment with Alicent, and I also feel like that was a good moment with Viserys. I feel like Viserys is so stuck on, the vision of Aegon and what happens, later down with his line, that he's so stuck on that he, I don't know, he doesn't realize that his daughter doesn't care about that. I mean, if I was him and I was put in that position, I had, a couple kids, and I realized that my heir's vision isn't the vision that I have, and maybe isn't the right vision for the kingdom, I probably would be like, maybe I'll choose another heir. Maybe I'll make one of my other children heir. Like, there's a lot of things that a smart man would naturally do in that situation. And it's not to be mean to Rhaenyra. It is just, she doesn't seem like somebody that is capable of ruling the kingdom. She makes really bad choices, and she really doesn't seem like she cares. Like, she's, to me, the worst version of Daemon. Like Daemon can go in there, he can make bad choices, but he's always thinking 2 steps ahead. She is just making bad choices and just stumbling over herself and just being like, I don't really care at the end. Like, she comes off as spoiled. She comes off as spoiled and not really somebody that's really world weary at this point. So overall, I mean, when I was watching this episode, I would have probably given this probably like a 6 out of 10. But as soon as the episode ended, I got to really thinking and dwelling on the conversations that took place in it. I would have to give this episode at least a 7 out of 10. Simply because we got a lot of information. We got a lot of information, maybe a little bit of backstory of what maybe happened to Viserys' father. We got a lot of subtle hints about Daemon's plans. We get to see Rhaenyra for her true colors, and we get to see, I don't know, a different side of Alicent that we haven't necessarily seen before. And of course, we got to see the Blackwood boy kill the Bracken Lord. Overall, I think it was pretty good. Like I said, those subtle hints when it comes to the Weirwood tree, something that I'm definitely going to be paying attention to in the future. I look forward to hopefully getting an answer from that. I really hope it's this season. But overall, guys, let me know what y'all think. I think it was, as a whole, it was really slow. A lot of conversation. Would have loved to have a little bit more action in it. But overall, I thought it was a pretty solid episode. As always, guys, let me know what y'all think in the comments down below. Did you love it? Did you hate it? As always, thanks for watching. Y'all take care.